Hi everyone, welcome to this Math 082 video. This is 4.5 where we practice our general factoring strategy. So that means we're going to have problems from 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4 all mixed together in a single problem set. So let's review what our strategy is here. So remember, the very first thing you do is you look for and you find your GCF, and then you factor that out. Then your second main process is to ask yourself, how many terms are in the polynomial that I'm trying to factor out? So we learned that if we have 4 terms, then we need to use factoring by grouping. If we have 3 terms, we're going to try to use the AC method. And remember, if we have 2 terms, we try to see if we have a difference of squares. So those are our 3 main methods that we have learned. So let's start with this first example. So the first thing I look for is a GCF. And remember, you can always pause this video and try to solve the problem before I get there, and then continue watching the video or skip through till you see the answer and see if you're right. That's a really good way to watch these videos, especially when they're sort of review topics. So in this case, the GCF is 1, so then we move on to ask ourselves how many terms. So it clearly has 3 terms, so we're going to use the AC method. So in this problem, our A is 1, our B is negative 23, and our C is 42. So, AC, the product of A and C is 42, and B is negative 23. So we need to start trying to list different things that go into 42. So one set of numbers that goes in is 21 times 2. But as you can see, 21 plus 2 is positive 23. So the easiest way to fix this is to make both numbers negative, and then as we do that, we get negative 23. So this can be factored out as x minus 21 times x minus 2. And if that's difficult for you, or if you're struggling with the AC method, I would encourage you to go back and watch some of my other videos, because at this point, the AC method should be a review. You should be already have mastered that topic. All right, let's do a few more examples. Okay, so we just did example 1 on the previous page. Now we're going to do example 2. So we have x squared plus 5x minus 7. So again, we're going to try to use the AC method because we have 3 terms. And also, if you look at it, our GCF is 1. Okay, so our A is 1, our B is 5, and our C is negative 7. So we need to find 2 numbers that multiply up to negative 7 and add up to positive 5. So as you might know, negative 7 is a prime number. So there's really only 2 possibilities. We could have negative 7 times 1, or we could have 7 times negative 1. So we have negative 7 plus 1 gives us negative 6. We have 7 plus negative 1 gives us positive 6. Neither of those solutions, as you can see, adds up to 5. So what do we do anytime we have a polynomial like this and our method doesn't work? Well, as you might recall, we say that trinomial is prime. Now, you might have seen in the past things like the quadratic formula. So that doesn't mean that this can't be factored, because in fact, it can. It has roots or zeros, which we'll get to later in the course. But for right now, there aren't any integer or rational solutions, and so that's why we say this is prime. All right, let's keep going. Example 3. So again, the very first thing we look for is our GCF. In this case, what is our GCF? Well, our GCF is n. So I can factor an n out of this. So I end up with n times the quantity, n minus 1. And that's all I can do. So we're done. So this is really a problem from 4.1, if you want to keep track of that. Let's look at example 4. So again, we always look for our GCF, see if we can find it. In this case, our GCF looks like it's 1. So then we move on to ask ourselves how many terms this polynomial has. And clearly it has 4 terms. So then we have to go and start using factoring by grouping. But remember, if I want to put parentheses around the second set of terms, I have to change the sign inside the parentheses first. And if you need a review on factoring by grouping, I encourage you to go back and watch the video that I made. All right, so let's take this first set of terms. The GCF is y, and x plus 5 remains. Over here, the GCF is 6, and again, x plus 5 remains. So we end up with y minus 6 times the quantity x minus 5, and that's our final answer. Let's look at example 5. So again, we look for our GCF. Our GCF is 1, and then we say we have 2 terms. So we try to find out if this is a difference of 2 squares. So remember, in order for this to be a difference of 2 squares, we would need a subtraction sign right here. But unfortunately, this is addition. In fact, this is the sum of 2 squares. And if you recall from a previous video, we learned that the sum of 2 squares is prime. So we're done, and we have to move on. All right, let's do one more example. If you look at this example here, okay, first, again, we always look for our GCF, which in this case is 1, and then we count the number of terms. So in this case, it looks like we have 4 terms, so we're going to try to factor by grouping. So that means we're going to group this first 2 set of terms together and then the second set of terms together. Looking at the GCF of the first set of terms, it looks like our GCF is xy. So it looks like we have 8x plus 9. Okay? Then let's look at our second set of terms. We can factor out a2. So it looks like we have 8x plus 9. So again, these 2 sets of parentheses are identical, so we can factor them out. So we have 8x plus 9, and then we have xy plus 2. And that's our final answer. Let's see if we can find a few more examples to work through. Nope.